You're wrapping up our radical acceptance series. I invite you, if you're just tuning in to us for the first time and you don't know about this book, please pick up a copy, go back to our YouTube channel and watch the previous services. Radical Acceptance by the teacher Tara Brach. We've been talking about acceptance as this way to awaken ourselves from this trance of unworthiness that we all, to some level, find ourselves trapped in from time to time. It's that pervasive feeling of us not being good enough, that we should be doing more, that we are not loved and lovable, all these things that we tell ourselves. This is about getting out of that so that we can live and love to the fullest potential that we're capable of. We talked about two wings, if you will, of radical acceptance: mindfulness and compassion. And how we really activate mindfulness is remembering to take what she calls a sacred pause, that in the midst of us being triggered or upset or angry or overcome by emotion, we do our best to notice it and remember to pause, stop our habitual ways of trying to avoid being in pain, check in with our bodies and see what's going on, and the feelings that are arising from that, and then to give ourselves the compassion to be with those feelings, and to accept them, and to cultivate a sense of loving kindness towards ourselves, and then we can extend it out to others. So as we conclude this series, the one thing that is left to remind us about, and it's perfect timing that it's on Valentine's Day, because this is, that time where those of us who are in relationships go the extra mile to make our loved ones feel loved, and whether it's other family members, a romantic partner, friends, whatever, this is a day that tends to invite us to focus on love. And part of the journey of radical acceptance is to get to a place where we can extend that love fully to ourselves. Last week we talked about how we tend to be able to extend compassion and forgiveness to others much easier than we do to ourselves. But the truth is, when we do it to ourselves first, it it um, creates deep healing for ourselves, and gets us over those hurdles that we put in our own way to stop ourselves from loving ourselves. When we live from this place of radical acceptance, what we begin to see more and more is that basic intrinsic goodness in ourselves and others. And when we can see that goodness that's in ourselves and others, especially ourselves, then we can move to a place of more genuinely and open heartedly loving ourselves. And when I say basic and intrinsic goodness, I'm talking about this is our essence. Goodness is our essence. And don't hear it in terms of, like, good and bad of what's going on out there in the world. This is the a sense of purity that we are, because we are made of and from God. We're made of and from love. So our basic essence, the core of who we are, our beingness, is love. It's goodness. And if you doubt me, you just got to spend 5 minutes with a newborn or a baby that's a few months old, and even a toddler who's beginning to discover the world. There's this just sense of pure joy, pure goodness, pure love that is extended without expectation. So that's who we are, our essence. And as we've gone through life, because of wounds that we have acquired, we bury that intrinsic goodness and love deeper and deeper, in part to try and protect ourselves from further pain. And then after a while, it's like we don't even believe that we're it for ourselves. And to be clear, because we've buried this intrinsic goodness and love for ourselves so deep, It doesn't mean that we don't always make great choices, or good choices or bad choices, but the choices we make are not who we are. And what I mean by that is it's the difference between guilt and shame. And Brene Brown talks a lot about this. Guilt is the remorseful feeling we have when we've maybe done something wronged another person, or caused pain towards another person, or done something that's not right by our own standards. That's guilt, and in some cases that's actually beneficial to help us not repeat that. But then there's shame, and shame is that deep, abiding feeling of unworthiness, that there's something wrong with me, something broken within me. And shame has no place in love. Shame is this story that seeks to tell us that we are not loved and lovable, that we're not made from love and made to love and be loved. So the journey of radical acceptance is awakening that realization that we often hold ourselves in shame, and we need to dissolve that shame. When we don't see the basic goodness in ourselves and other people, we forget that there's a sense of oneness and connectivity, that when we harm another, we harm ourselves, and when we harm ourselves, we harm another. This is this idea of oneness that we talk about. When we don't see the intrinsic goodness in ourselves and others, we start to hold resentments against other people. And I love how she describes resentment in the book. Resentment, she says, is that idea of feeling it all over again, reliving the story of how we believed we were wronged, right? So we keep retelling that story, replaying that story, relitigating the story, feeling the feelings that come up from it all over again, and we hold on to them. That's resentment. And more often than not, the resentment that we feel for other people is actually deep down the resentment we feel for ourselves. We're just projecting it out there. The way we dissolve those resentments, and here's why we need to dissolve the resentments, again, is blocking ourselves from loving and being loved as truly as we can be. But resentments also block the flow of abundance, right? Because when there is resentment, we don't see the good that's in front of us. And if you've ever taken an abundance class, a prosperity class, read any abundance book, what you remember is that the universe, I believe, is conspiring for our good. But when we hold others in resentments, we do not see the gift and the good that they are bringing towards us. So how do we begin to dissolve those resentments? It's through forgiveness, which she describes in the book as letting go of the blame and opening up to the pain that we've tried to push away. Letting go of the blame and opening to the pain that we have tried to push away. And as we said before, pain is not a good or a bad thing. Pain is just pain. We're the ones who ascribe the meaning of pain is bad and should be avoided at all costs. Or if you feel pain, let's hurry up and do what we can to cover it up. But pain points the way to where the deeper healing needs to happen. And the part of radical acceptance is, again, accepting that that's what's happening within us and just being with it to see where it takes us. So what is forgiveness again? Letting go of blame and opening to the pain. And forgiveness is hard because, when we speak of others who have wounded us and done us wrong and caused us trauma and in some cases abuse us, it's hard for us to forgive that person, to let go of the blame of that person having wronged us. So she provides a kind of a great first step, which is to say, rather than forgive a self, a person, we try to forgive the experiences that we identify with that person. Let me say that again. Instead of trying to forgive the person, as in try to remove the blame for them because it may be their responsibility for what they did, we forgive the experience. So what that looks like is when we think of what happened, we can start by simply saying, I forgive this. and therefore start dissolving the energy around the experience, not necessarily around the person. Okay. And to be clear, forgiveness doesn't mean we excuse that person or their harmful behavior or allow ourselves to be open to more entry. That's not what it means. Forgiveness is a process of dropping under the blame and the resentment into even what the deeper pain is and the deeper emotional, spiritual wounds, so that we can begin to heal them, so that we can dissolve the chains of resentment. That's really what forgiveness is. It's an inside job for us, not for anyone else out there. And it's not a product of effort, but of openness. We don't strain our way to forgiveness. We relax into openness. And it's not, again, a process that has a beginning and an end. It's a state of being. It's just a way of being into the openness. When we can do that, then we can begin to dissolve those resentments just by staying open. So how do we remember our intrinsic goodness? She invites us to reflect on the qualities and behaviors we appreciate in ourselves. Reflect on the qualities and behaviors we appreciate in ourselves. Remember that saying, what's that saying? It's not good to blow your own trumpet. And I like to say, well, if no one's blowing my trumpet, who else is gonna, right? It's okay to reflect, not to boastfully brag or be in that ego place, but simply reflect internally on your qualities and behaviors that you appreciate in yourself. When you've extended kindness, when you've been a loving presence, when you've helped someone who needed help, when you have eased the suffering of another, when you were compassionate. These are all wonderful qualities, and you should appreciate yourself for them. But even if that's too awkward and too uncomfortable, she invites us to acknowledge our basic desire to be happy, to be loved, and to feel our own goodness. And if even that's too much of a stretch, she invites us to look through the eyes of someone who loves us. I call this borrowing the belief of another person. Even if you can't believe in your own goodness, in your own talents, in your own greatness, in the wonderful being of light that you are, others will see it. Allow them to tell you about it and accept that. Borrow their belief. She writes that as our trust in our basic goodness deepens, we're able to express our love and creativity more fully in the world. When we are not consumed by blaming and turning on ourselves and others, we are free to cultivate our talents and gifts together, to contribute them to the world in service. We are free to love each other and the whole of life without holding back. We are free to love each other and the whole of life without holding back. When we keep ourselves steeped in resentments, it tampons down our creativity. It tampons down how we spread our love into the world. And through forgiveness, we become free to love ourselves, each other, the whole of life, and bring that creativity out into the world. Every Sunday, you see this amazing group of talented musicians, creative musicians. These are also people who I know from personal experience are like the greatest avatars of love that I have met in my lifetime. And that's no accident that the two of those go together. This is the heart of spiritual awakening, when we can love each other and connect with each other and have these conscious relationships with each other that are based in love, not in resentment. And it doesn't mean that it's gonna be a perfect, and I also think it's perfect, but a perfect relationship where we may never say anything or do anything that doesn't trigger us. But again, going all the way back to spiritual partnerships, but even in this series on radical acceptance, when others do things that we feel pain from, again, that's our invitation to go under that pain and realize what is the healing that needs to happen, because that was our own wound that was triggered. I've been saying this a lot in the last few weeks, in the last series before this, but I think that's the crux of our transformation right there. That's the thing that we were having trouble really getting and accepting, that our healing, our true healing, comes as a result of being triggered by others, feeling the pain and going under that pain to wrap our own wounds in our own love. And believe that when we can truly do that, we'll be freed from resentments and fear and greed and all those things that help create this disjointed world. Because as we spiritually mature, our desire to live with each other in truth, with open heart, becomes more compelling. That's what drives us more than the habit of avoiding pain and getting lost with distraction. But all of this is predicated on the one single question that she asks us in this book. Do you really trust that you are a Buddha? Do you really trust that you are God, that you are divine, that you are an avatar of light? Do you really trust and believe that in your heart of hearts? Do you trust that you are an awakened one? Do you trust and believe that you are worthy? Because even if you don't feel it, trust in it and knowing it for yourself, believing that that's the state of it, can begin to shift your feelings around it and really step you into true radical acceptance. There's a beautiful poem she shares in the book on page 258, and I'll close the talk today by sharing it. My beloved child, break your heart no longer. Each time you judge yourself, you break your own heart. You stop feeding on the love, which is the wellspring of your vitality. The time has come, your time, to live, to celebrate, and to see the goodness that you are. Let no one, no thing, no idea, no ideal obstruct you. If one comes, even in the name of truth, forgive it for its unknowing. Do not fight. Let go and breathe into the goodness that you are. Breathe into the goodness that you are. I see the goodness in each and every one of you. Please see it for yourself.